Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining today's stream. We have a pretty interesting day set for us. The market is uptrending in a pretty strong way. We actually broke yesterday's high in pre-market right now, but we actually had some horrible news come out regarding the jobs report, but the market doesn't care at all about that. We can see on CNBC there were expectations for the jobs report of 573,000, and the actual number came in at 210,000. So that was a huge miss, but the market's definitely it doesn't care about it, Tom. It's rocketing up.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty crazy to see that the SPY is going up in pre-market with these bad numbers coming out. And the only reason I could think is maybe because Powell always says that they're going to pretty much start tapering whenever the jobs start getting better. So as the jobs get worse, maybe they'll start to delay the tapering a little longer. But in the end, I would have expected the market to still go down. This was a pretty bad beat, Mike. Like, we're not just talking about just barely coming under the expectation. We came under the expectation under like down 50%. Like, that's a pretty bad beat right there. And I would think that in the end, only increasing by 210,000 whenever you're expecting that much, I just really think that, the market would have taken a bit of a hit, but we're actually going up. It's honestly like kind of blowing my mind, but hey, with the way all these earnings have been going and stuff lately, I guess it's not too surprising.
Right, and then speaking of earnings, let's take a look at DOCU. This stock is down around 30% this morning, 34% this morning. They actually reported a great EPS. Their expectation was like minus 1 cent or so, right around there, a little bit under that. And they came in with an actual EPS of 58 cents. Basically, they had a bad outlook and their stock's tanking, but they actually had a pretty solid earnings beat, especially on that EPS.
Yeah, that's definitely a good beat. Well over, like, man, that's like
That's a
300.
lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's like 1,000% or something,
Yep.
actually, like even higher. So that's a really nice beat. I mean, in the end, I can't believe DocuSign fell down this much, Mike, all the way down to 154 here in pre-market. Definitely not looking good. Kind of like what we were talking about yesterday. It's just almost like the Kathy curse going on here. All of her stocks are just dying lately. We have DraftKings down, Docu down. Just so many of these like growth plays are just getting tanked. And unfortunately, DocuSign, I just can't believe the huge gap they created on the daily chart, Mike. Like, I'll be honest, I could have maybe expected to drop down to like 200 or something, but never would I have thought we'd fallen down to 150.
Exactly. I'm looking at some of these weekly put options on DocuSign. Some of them were up like 18,000% today compared to yesterday. Right now, I'm looking at the 170 strike puts that expired today. Yesterday, these were going for around $10 each. Right now, they're going for $1,800 each.
Wow, that's insane, Mike. I mean, those valuations are nuts. The IV is shooting up too. It's just what a crazy move by this by DocuSign. And they even had earnings, which generally, that generally creates a bit of an IV crush. But it looks like with the way they moved down, the IV is actually going up, which is great to see.
Could you imagine if you just like did like a gamble play and just put like $1,000 in the docu puts yesterday? Like, someone did it, probably on Wall Street Bets.
Yeah, I bet they did, man. I'd be really happy myself. That sounds awesome, man. You'd definitely be walking away happy today. And we would definitely be starting the week next week with a very upbeat tone. But man, I'm glad to see him beat those earnings. I thought that was good for them to beat the EPS. I think that might be showing that they have a good, at least a strong backing, even though their stock's down. So I don't know. It's going to be a hard one to say for the next few months. Like, I know that we've been seeing like Zoom and a bunch of other stocks falling, Mike. Do you think that DocuSign is like a viable pickup down here? I know not right away, but maybe over the next few months.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, personally, I like Zoom a little bit more, but I definitely do like DocuSign, especially like over like the next like 5 to 10 years, and at the level that they're at. I'll definitely consider selling some puts on them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of with you. I like Zoom a little bit better too. And let's look at them today because they are down 3.6, 3.7% again and dropping. Looking at the 5-minute chart, they're breaking those lows again. It's just, unfortunately, Zoom just keeps going down also. It's just a pretty bad sign. And, like we've been saying, they're going to be at a pretty nice support soon and hopefully they bounce. But who knows when that's going to be? It might be at $150 at this point.
No doubt. All right, how's the market overall doing? I know we have, some of these tech plays still tanking off, but how's the SPY?
Actually doing good here at open on the 5 minute candle. We're extending nicely to the upside. We're breaking the pre-market high, and we broke the high of yesterday. So I think the SPY looks pretty good. Honestly, I thought the SPY was in a pretty good like W formation yesterday. I thought it looked kind of good how it like double bottomed at 450, and it just almost set up just like a W. And generally, whenever it sets up like this, the beginning of the W pretty much hit up here at this resistance at around 464. So I would almost expect this to maybe head back up towards 462 to 464 as well. So I'm definitely going to be watching the SPY today. I love how it's breaking these SMAs to the upside, especially with that jobs report going bad. I think it's great to see the market doing well with this. And we do have some stocks in the green today, pretty largely. We actually have FSLY up 7% doing well. Moderna's up quite a bit. They're up 3 or 4%, and then we actually have Roblox rocketing back up 2% as well. But it just seems like lots of stocks are green today, even though the market had some terrible news.
Exactly. Crazy stuff. Wow. All right. One other thing I wanted to point out really quickly was DIDI. There is some really bad news regarding this one. Basically, they plan on fully delisting from U.S. exchanges. So, basically, from my understanding right now, if you do own shares in Didi, you are just going to own the shares that are listed on the Hong Kong exchange, and those shares will be at a pretty steep discount. So I just figured I'd bring this up as we have a bunch of China stocks tanking off. Didi was all over the place this morning in pre-market, and it looks like the news is pretty bad right now. So all of the China stocks are suffering, but as of right now, Didi will be delisting.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad thing to hear, Mike. I mean, in the end, I know that people have been talking about that happening to some of these China stocks for the past few months, and unfortunately, it's actually now coming true with Didi. So that's a bad thing to hear. I'm surprised to see that they popped up in pre-market a little bit, but in the end, they ended up falling down over those next couple of hours. So it came back to more like reality here, but in the end, this is some crazy stuff, Mike, with Didi, with all these China stocks. It worries me if maybe some of the other stocks are going to delist. I mean, I'm not too worried about Baba or any of those yet, but look at how it's negatively affecting these. Baba's down, 5%. I know Didi's down, of course, but, that one's warranted, but it's dragging down the rest of the China stocks too. We have JD actually down 6%, falling below that $80 support. Just definitely not looking good for these China stocks. And even on the daily chart, Mike, like, I thought Baba might start turning around soon, but they are just continuing to make these new lows.
Exactly. It's looking pretty rough. So definitely keep that in mind when playing some of the China stocks lately. There's just a lot of negative news with them. But before we get through the rest of the stream, I just want to welcome everyone really quickly. So thank you guys so much for joining, and welcome I'm Fierce, Vicky, Spacely, George, and Mike. Thank you guys so much for joining. Let us know what stocks you're watching. We'll probably take a look at them. And then we have Mike saying thoughts on adding more shares to Disney and DraftKings. I really like it. They're both at really, really low levels. Disney did have bad earnings. DraftKings, in my opinion, had fine earnings, but they're both at good levels. A lot of growth stocks are really selling off. So when we look at DraftKings, we have Palantir, Corsair, Zoom, Redfin. Basically, any growth stock is selling off right now. So it's not like DraftKings is the only stock in the market tanking down. Most growth stocks are, but all in all, I do like it. Adding shares is definitely a relatively safe trade rather than buying an out of the money option that expires in a couple weeks. But all in all, I do like it. No one knows the bottom, but they're both at pretty great levels.
Yeah, I think it's smart to do it right now, of course, especially if you like the companies. Personally, I think Disney is going to be a lot safer for you. Obviously, they're just a little bit more established, and I feel like that they're pretty good to grab down here around this 140 support. Like I've been saying, they might come down and retest 130 or 135 soon, but I feel like they'll still go back on the uptrend pretty nicely. I know I'm definitely going to be grabbing some Disney down here pretty soon, and I know I've been getting some DraftKings as well, so I think that it's pretty good. I've been doing it personally, and I feel like that Disney is just such a solid company, and they got into the streaming platform. They're getting into sports betting with ESPN. So I feel like that in the end, they have a lot of good stuff going for them. And Disney, they've been some great innovators, like acquiring ESPN, acquiring, well, at least trying to get into the sports betting sector, getting Disney Plus going. They just have a lot of good stuff. And I feel like with them having this steep discount, it's almost like too easy to pick up shares down here.
Yeah, and then plus we're still waiting on that news with Disney and ESPN and their sports betting deal.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. Like I know that sports betting industry is getting big, and if ESPN could implement something, that would be amazing because ESPN's like one of the biggest like sports apps. It's not necessarily like a streaming service. I know they offer that, but most people just go on there, look at scores, look at everything like that, like analyst predictions and different stuff. So it'll be really cool to kind of see how they implement with sports betting over the next couple of years.
Yep. All right, and then we have George saying RUN is about to test support at $40. I'm waiting to get in again. Yeah, it's a solid solar play as well. Another growth stock that's struggling. So, I know it sucks with all this selling pressure with all the growth plays, but it definitely does suck in the long term, but it definitely does suck in the short term. But when you look back throughout history, some of the biggest I don't want to say crashes, but some of the biggest points where everyone's selling and all the stocks are selling off end up being like the best opportunities.
Yeah, they really do, to be honest. And whenever you're looking at like RUN, yeah, like we're retesting the support like for like the third or fourth time now. It might keep going down in the short term, but whenever all these growth stocks start going back up, expect some of these stocks to just rocket. Like I know that they generally move in sympathy with each other. So for the most part, obviously it's not all 100% correlated, but for the most part, like whenever RUN's down, we're seeing Plug down, or PLUG down. We're seeing stuff like Blink down, different stocks like that, of course. Other growth stocks, even like DraftKings, Zoom, generally they're all going down like around the same time. And I feel like that once they all start going back up, it'll definitely just almost drag like all of them up. So like we look at like RUN, sure, they're going down in the short term. If we could get some good news, maybe with a couple of other of these growth stocks and they start rocketing, it might change the sentiment around on some of these. So hopefully we see that happen pretty soon. I'm really hoping it hits this support too at $40. I think that's a pretty awesome level to look at. And I'm definitely going to be eyeing it up too. I just threw that on my chart when you said it.
Awesome. And then George also said that the chart on RUN reminds him of CHPT about to test a strong support at $20 again. So, yeah, it does actually look pretty similar.
Yeah, it does actually. And it looks like CHPT, yeah, they're actually getting close again too. So definitely eye both of them up. Actually, CHPT has earnings coming up, not to take away from RUN, but yeah, those are going to be interesting with the earnings. Kind of going back to RUN, man, if we fall below the 40 support, I'm definitely going to be pretty worried about it in the short term. But I think if you get shares and hold for the long term, you'll be pretty safe.
All right. All right. So then we have Spacely saying, I had a few 40 strike calls on XLF. I went to sleep up 226%, but currently at down 10%. Keep me in your prayers. Yeah, sorry to hear that. That's it's pretty rough, but I would assume it's a daily expiration, but yeah, that data decay can definitely be pretty brutal.
Wow, yeah, that was crazy to see actually. I can't believe that it tanked down that much. It didn't even really fall off too much. So yeah, that's definitely got decayed pretty rough. I guess they expired this week, I guess, right?
I would assume so.
Yeah, they'd almost have to fall down by that much, but yeah, I'm definitely keeping you in the prayers though, Spacely, for sure. Let's hope XLF gets back up there today. Let's hope those financials start to go back. Let's go check out some of those, maybe like JP Morgan. I know some of those stocks have been doing pretty well, but today they are coming down a little bit, which sucks to see. On the daily chart, it's hard to say with these bank stocks, Mike. They're kind of like hovering right around their supports, but in the end, I feel like if the overall market starts to tank, they'll definitely tank too.
Exactly. And JP Morgan's actually holding up pretty well when you compare it to stocks like Citigroup or something like that, because it's kind of tanking.
It is actually, like, you're right. Like JP Morgan and Bank of America look a little bit better. Same thing with Goldman. They look pretty good. And then we go look at Citigroup and they're like, honestly, they didn't even make new all-time highs over the past couple of months. They've been having too many problems getting above $75 a share. So yeah, definitely, Mike. It's crazy to see how Citigroup's lagging. I wonder how WFC is doing. And it looks like they're doing a little bit better. But yeah, Citigroup is really lagging behind for some reason. And I'm glad to see JP Morgan and Bank of America doing a little better.
For sure. All right, and then we have Iranical saying, "What's going on with SE?" Let's take a look at SE. Honestly, I haven't been following it too much, but over the past month, it looks brutal. They have been getting destroyed. They went from like 370 all the way down to 248. So, like I said, honestly, I haven't been following it too much, but I'll definitely do some research with it.
Yeah, me too. I actually saw some news with them earlier this week, and I think it might have created some crazy volume. And I definitely need to research the company a little bit more. But I did hear some good news, so hopefully, the stock does pretty well. I think it's had a pretty good opportunity if you like it for the long term. But keep in mind, it's definitely on a bad downtrend. I could see it possibly going lower too with how much momentum it has.
For sure. All right, and then I just want to check something really quickly. All right, and then with the next comment we have, so Spacely's trade was actually the January 14th expiration, so that was pretty interesting regarding XLF. I'm surprised there was that big of a swing overnight. So we'll definitely keep you in the prayers though either way. But Tom, looking at the market overall, when we first opened, most of the stocks on my watch list were in the green and they were looking pretty good, but the market's actually red now, and most of my watch list is red. We have BABA leading the way to the downside and all the China stocks, but even besides that, we have DraftKings down another 5%, Zoom down 5%, Run down 4%, Palantir, Teladoc, RCL all down.
Yeah, it's not looking good. I'm just gonna like go from the bottom to the top of my watch list here. Yeah, we have Baba down, Neo down, like you said. Even Xpeng, which has been doing pretty good over the past few weeks, is down 6%. Zoom, like you mentioned, unfortunately, poor old Zoom, they just cannot stop no matter where they end up at. Even though Zoom had actually decent earnings, we talk about some stocks having decent earnings. They actually came in with a positive earnings, and I thought it was pretty surprising to see them tank off this much. DraftKings again. Wow, Mike, DraftKings is they fell below $30 a share a few minutes ago. What happened here? Down 4%. That's definitely not a good sign at all. Definitely hovering right around that $30 support. We're gonna have to eye this one up because, man, if they break below that, it's gonna be pretty scary in the short term. RUN down, Blink down, Tilray down, CCL down, even AI down 3.5% today. These growth stocks are not doing good today, unfortunately. The good news is that some of the safer stocks like McDonald's, Kraft, Target are doing pretty good, but in the end, those aren't like market movers. So it's a very tough day. Netflix is even in the red, AMD's red, Tesla's red, Nvidia's red. It just seems like all the bigger hype stocks are red today.
Yeah, so I want to talk about something with DraftKings really quickly because there's a lot of news going on with this one actually. So there is a big short seller named Jim Chanos or whatever, and he is shorting DraftKings. He's like a pretty, I guess you could say, famous investor. But here's the thing. He's the same investor who has been shorting Tesla and keeps saying Tesla's a fraud and all this and all that. So long story short, there is some news about Jim Chanos shorting DraftKings related to their insane marketing spend. That's what he said. But then again, he's the same guy who is shorting Tesla, and that clearly didn't work out too well. And it looks like the CEO of DraftKings went on CNBC today and talked about the subject, and it looks like he roasted Jim a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna rewatch the segment on CNBC with the DraftKings CEO. But I just figured I'd bring that up because it has some negative news. But even here's the thing though, like, yes, DraftKings is spending a ton of money on marketing, but if we're looking at like a 5 to 10 year time span, in my opinion, that's a good thing because now's like a crucial time to establish like the market dominance, considering some of these states like New York, they just got their sports betting license in. Like, that'll be a huge state for the next 5, 10, 20 years, and now's the time to get as much market share as possible. So like, in my opinion, like, yes, it sucks that you have to spend a lot of money now, but I feel like down the road that'll pay off big time, and especially in a world and in the economy right now where rates are so low, like, in my opinion, it's a good thing. Like, yeah, it sucks, but I personally, I think it's like a stupid like thesis to short the stock, especially if he plans on shorting it for the long term.
Yeah, I do too, and it's just everybody always they get all caught up in the news in the short term and stuff. And in the end, it's really easy to like look at, these stocks going down and just get like really like angry at them and stuff. And obviously we have these short sellers coming out and stuff like that. So it's just creating some really bad news for these stocks. And in the end, like I'm with Mike, I feel like that with them spending money right now, that's going to be really good for them down the line. Like keep in mind that with them spending all this money, they're keeping their name in the headlines. They're getting their name out there. Whenever these states start to legalize, all these people have been seeing DraftKings, DraftKings, DraftKings. So who do you think they're going to use for sports betting? Probably DraftKings. So whenever we're looking at it, I think that it's definitely going to be good for the next few years, Mike. Like you said, with the states actually legalizing and getting more licensing, like you said in New York, that's going to be huge for them whenever they're allowed to do that soon. And then other states as well. Like it's not just New York. My state of Missouri, it's not even legalized here yet. And there's plenty of other states. I think only like 9 or 10 or maybe 14 states have it legalized out of the 50 states. So obviously there's a lot of market share still to go. And I feel like that they have a lot of room to grow in the future. And, they're so established that even if their share price keeps going down in the short term, they're not going to go anywhere. And I'll be honest, like I'm holding DraftKings shares. I'm not going to let them go for a few years. I'm just going to sit on it and, play it Warren Buffett style and just let it go. I think it's the smart way to go. And, whenever stocks are in the beginning and they're growing like DraftKings are, this is just how it kind of goes. They go through these stages where they have a lot of hype and they fly up. And then they go through these stages where they're spending money and they go down a little bit. It happened with everything. It happened with AMD in the beginning. It happened with Tesla in the beginning. It happened with Nvidia in the beginning. It pretty much happens with every growth stock in the beginning.
Yeah. And let's just keep in mind one more time, this is the same guy who shorted Tesla. So I'm not really too concerned about it, but I figured I'd bring it up because it is definitely some relevant news. So interesting stuff there. And then we have George saying, by the way, Kathy Wood started a position on XPEV yesterday. Seems to me like it's actually a strong conviction that these Chinese EV stocks won't be delisted. And then on top of that, Charlie Munger doubled down on his China positions too. So I know there's a lot of interesting news regarding these China stocks, and there's definitely a lot of uncertainty. But with that being said, it should present an opportunity. Like let's say like the tensions between the U.S. and China get a lot better. These stocks are at some pretty awesome levels.
Yeah, I think they are too. And even XPEV, like it's very interesting to hear that she bought that yesterday. Now it's down 7%. But in the end, I feel like this is a pretty good company. They've been on the uptrend quite a bit lately. I thought maybe it was not the best entry in the world, but I feel like that this stock might do pretty good for the long term. I know I've heard some pretty good news coming out of China with them. I know that their last earnings report definitely was not the best by any means, but I feel like that they've been doing pretty good lately. And a lot better than a lot of other stocks have been doing. So I'm glad XPEV. I'm glad to see her buying in. I think that'll give me a little bit more confidence for them in the future. But in the end, they're a China stock too, and I don't think that they'll get delisted XPEV. But it's hard to kind of gauge some of these China EV stocks like XPeng and NIO. It's just a lot harder to gauge it because they're over there in China, and obviously we're not getting the full picture there.
Yeah, and like if China doesn't delist these stocks, then they'll be great plays. But then again, if China does delist them, that could be pretty disastrous. Kind of like what we saw with DIDI, which is down
Yeah.
11% today, and they IPO'd at like around 18, and now they're at like 7. So, and they're probably only going to get worse. So, there's definitely a lot of risk that comes along with these plays, but at the same time, there's also a lot of reward. And then we have Alex saying, any support and resistance levels for AMD? Tom, what are you seeing for AMD?
Yeah, they're actually getting close to some pretty big supports here. I feel like AMD could be nice for some plays over the next few days, possibly to the downside, actually. Looking at AMD, they're actually getting really close to this 145 support. We almost bounced at 145 yesterday. It was more of at 146.50, but a couple days ago, we bounced right off of 145. And then a couple weeks ago, we definitely hit 145 as well. AMD is actually coming down today. Like we talked about, a lot of stocks turned red here. If they fall below 145, I could see them going down pretty drastically. they are already down quite a bit, but I'm really seeing that 145 support as an amazing support level. And then there's a huge resistance up here right around 152.50. You can see over the past 2 trading days, AMD has really failed to break out above this like 152.50 level. If we look at it on the 1 minute chart, it's just bounced off of here almost 4 or 5 times. So that should give us some pretty good a pretty good resistance to look at least. So if we start to go down, we break below 145, I'll definitely look at some puts, but just be careful because as we go down today, we're going to be retesting some of these supports around 146, 145. We might bounce there. So I would definitely try to make it break through that if you can.
All right, good stuff. And Tom, we're just seeing a ton of bleeding in the market today, especially from Baba, Neo, Snapchat, Boeing, DraftKings, Zoom. Everything's just selling off again. Lucid's taking a beating. Everything's just bleeding, Tom. So it looks like a pretty bad end to the week.
Yeah, that's a pretty unfortunate thing to see. Unfortunately, I thought the week was going fairly good, for all the news that came out. I thought it could have been going a lot worse, to be honest. And we had that nice up day yesterday. We went up this morning in pre-market pretty well. It was looking pretty good. And then, these bad job reports came out and it didn't affect the market much in pre-market, but now that the market opened, it seems like the news caught up with it. So yeah, it's definitely a pretty sharp sell-off I can see on the SPY. Like you said, the tech stocks are really tanking. The QQQ is looking awful, honestly, today at least. And it's just a really bad sign with all these growth stocks / tech stocks going down. And then we also have the variant coming across. I just see some news coming across CNBC that says that the variant's now been detected in 5 US states. I know that before it was just in California. Now they found it in 5 states. Definitely not a good sign to see it spreading that quickly. And I actually see something on CNBC, Mike. I'm going to pull it up for us really fast. It says that the IMF urges the Fed to speed up monetary policy tightening amid mounting inflation fears. So definitely interesting to see that the monetary fund is kind of going at the Fed like this. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see how the Fed starts to talk over the next couple of months with all this stuff going on.
I know, it's crazy. Everything is tanking, Tom. I'm like looking in Discord really quickly, but yeah, I mean, even the cruise lines are back down too. Like, I know they were looking decent yesterday with just the market recovery, but it's just like everything's losing its I guess you could say momentum, and it's totally reversing to the downside. And I guess this will just present a pretty good opportunity for the long term with shares, and then maybe the short term with puts.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys are, what I've been looking at for puts, Mike, is maybe some of these bigger tech stocks like AMD and Nvidia. I know that like these two stocks have been up so much over the past year and the past couple of years. I feel like that they could just take a little bit of a pullback, and it doesn't mean that their companies are bad or that they're doing bad or anything. It's just sometimes we see ebbs and flows like this, and I feel like that some of these bigger tech stocks like Nvidia and AMD, of course, are just a little bit overextended. I feel like that they could pull back a little bit. Like, I'm not saying they'll pull back too much, but AMD, if they break below 145, I could see them falling to 140 or possibly even like 135 after that. I think that could be a pretty safe play there. And just looking at it in general, like a lot of stocks were getting overextended. Like we had AMD, Nvidia. We even had stocks like Target, Walmart, DKS. Like a lot of these stocks were like making new all-time highs, and now a lot of them are pulling back pretty harshly, which is pretty crazy to see. But Mike, I just can't believe that some of these tech stocks like AMD and Nvidia, like once they break supports, I feel like they could pull back pretty hard.
I'm with you for sure. And then you could just look at the SMH ETF. That's just basically a bunch of tech stocks or a bunch of chip stocks all in one. And it looks pretty good to the downside, in my opinion. If AMD and Nvidia tank, it's pretty likely that SMH will too.
Yeah, and they're actually right at that key $300 support. So that might be a little bit of a better one to look at, especially if the options are priced a little bit better. So yeah, definitely look at that one too. It looks a lot. This one actually looks easier to look at, Mike, especially being like right at $300. It seems like it obviously moves a lot more with the overall chip market, which I think is going to be better because AMD and Nvidia, we always know they have some crazy up and down movement. Like sometimes Nvidia will be down and then AMD might be up 5% with some good news of their own. So I definitely like the ETF better too. I think that's a smart way to point it out.
Yep. All right. So let's see. We have Rome saying DraftKings is tanking. Everything's tanking right now. Zoom, Palantir, Corsair, Neo, Square, RCL, everything's tanking right now. The market overall is tanking. Looks like I guess you could say there's just a ton of selling pressure right now. So long term should be fine as long as you grab shares and not short term options. And then for like short term plays, it doesn't hurt if you wanted to scalp some puts. Some of these IVs are still relatively low. I know you have Palantir pulled up there, Tom. Like if that breaks down and the IV starts to rise, if you are looking for short-term plays, there definitely will be opportunity with scalping that one.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually the IV's pretty low comparative to the past like few years at least. You're right. If they start to get on a bad downtrend, if this IV can maybe get back up to like somewhere around like maybe 80 to 100%, I think that would be awesome for Palantir's options, of course, and plenty of other stocks too. Like let's just go down my watch list again. Like we have Neo really red. Their IV is actually already shooting up, but their stock's down 10%. So they've been moving a little bit more drastically than others have. But even like Xpeng, like a lot of these stocks going down, their IV starting to really pop up. And look at AI's implied volatility, Mike. That was actually pretty crazy to see that AI's implied volatility was at 120% a couple days ago, and they're getting a pretty steep drop. So that's going to be interesting for them. And look at Lucid, actually. Lucid's starting to really sell off, Mike. This one might be a pretty good put play too.
I know.
At least for the short term.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like Lucid
sure.
for the long term, but for the short term, I think it'll be great.
It's crazy, Tom. I'm just looking at everything. Everything's bleeding. I have two green stocks on my watch list, which is UPS and AbbVie, but they're just like barely green. I guess we could look at like some of the like short-term day trading opportunities right now. Like we could see AMD's breaking lows. That one doesn't look bad for like a put position. Oh, Rivian, Tom. Let's take a look at Rivian.
Ooh, RIVN down 8%, down to almost $100 a share. Look at how much they're down, Mike. Look at this on the 5 minute, just almost straight down movement for the past like 25 minutes. That's a pretty bad extension to the downside. Look at this on the 1 year daily. They're almost down to new all-time lows, actually.
Yeah. So that's another put position or potential put day trade. We have some of the cruise lines and airlines going. What else do we have? Baba, maybe.
Coinbase?
Microsoft, maybe. Let's see. VIX calls, maybe. So there definitely are opportunities. But, Tom, are you seeing anything right now?
I know that before you said VIX, I was definitely eyeing this one up for a while, Mike, being VXX. I know that we've talked about this one for the past few days, ever since they had that nice pop early on in the week. And I'll be honest, if VXX can break up above $27, I think it could be a pretty good play to the upside. This was my free day trade in the Discord yesterday. If we broke above 27, I said to play calls, and it looks like we hit 27 and fell right down. If we end up breaking above 27, I feel like it could end up being a pretty good play to the upside. Looking at VXX, the overall market's going down. We have VXX going up. If the SPY starts to really sell off, I think that the VXX could start to pop up pretty decently. And it's already up quite a bit this morning. And, this week, I think the VXX has shown that the volatility is coming back a little bit. Like we're starting to see the VIX start to move up a little bit. The volatility is coming back. Lots of these stocks are going down. So be ready for some crazy movement. With the VIX rising, it's definitely going to show that the market's going to get pretty crazy here, I think.
Yep. Alrighty. What else do we have? Apple's even tanking. It's a bad day when Apple's even tanking.
Yeah, that's terrible. Down 0.6%. One of the big powerhouses of the stock, of the market, I should say. Apple, Microsoft. Let's check out MSFT as well. Wow, they're actually looking a lot worse than Apple, Mike. Down 1% and breaking like the lows of the past few days. Definitely not good for them. What about Tesla? I know they've been. Wow, yeah, Tesla looks just like Microsoft, actually. Pretty bad sell-offs here from the tech sector. Definitely not looking good. I know I have a couple stocks on my watch list to the upside, like Fastly, for example. And even though Fastly's green up 1%, they're pulling back pretty hard since market open. They may as well almost be red, to be honest.
Yep. Crazy stuff. How's oil doing?
Actually, oil was going up earlier this morning, and it's actually just kind of holding its ground, believe it or not. Crude oil's up 3%. It has been going down since market open. I've actually been keeping my eyes on ExxonMobil for it's actually been good to see that ExxonMobil is coming down a little bit harder than crude oil is, but crude oil itself is actually holding up pretty well this morning. I was pretty surprised to see this. And with the overall market going down, I'm hoping that crude starts to come down too. And it looks like it's starting to. So hopefully we see it start to come down a little more. And I'll be honest, my crude earlier in the week was hitting $62 a barrel, just about $62.50. So that's a crazy number. I know that we were at $85 a barrel just a couple weeks ago. If we go look at like the 1 year daily, you can see how drastically oil's been falling off as the US and a couple other countries have been kind of adjusting their oil inventories to kind of bring prices down. So it's been definitely a crazy past few weeks for crude oil, but it looks like it's definitely back on the uptrend today.
For sure. All right. So, Tom, I mean, we basically covered everything that's moving. Like, I don't know if you have like anything to look at, any notable plays, any ideas or anything, because we looked at all of the plays that are tanking down for like longer term plays. We looked at some of the short term plays. I don't know. I don't know what you're seeing.
One thing that I would love to go over is maybe we have some of these like not gaming stocks. They're kind of like gaming stocks, kind of like casino stocks like WYNN and LVS. I think these stocks are in some very crazy circumstances right now. They're going down kind of with the China stocks. So I feel like that they're going to be hard to play for the next few weeks, but I feel like for the longer term, like Win and LVS might end up being pretty good pickups. It's just that they just keep breaking down towards lows. And, LVS is honestly like right around this long-term support down here, right around $33 a share. Not looking bad around support, but if all this China news keeps going south, obviously they could keep going down. And looking at WYNN, it's almost like the same scenario. Like I'm wanting to grab some of these companies for the long term, but they just have such bad movement in the short term. I'm just really hoping that they can start to turn around over the next couple of years. And I'm just really eyeing like a longer term pickup on some of these, maybe for leaps or maybe for shares, but I'm definitely eyeing it up for the next couple of months.
No doubt. Yeah, it's crazy. And then like you pointed out, like they should be pretty good longer term plays. Like Win and LVS are definitely struggling with some of the China stocks because they do have some properties over in China, and basically whenever there's bad tensions between the U.S. and China, it's not good for companies like this. But it should be good for the long term. And like even speaking of like some of these like casino and hotel stocks, how's Penn doing?
Penn, let's go check them out. That's actually another one that's a very interesting pickup. They're doing pretty bad as well. They're down 4% today, and it looks like over the past year, they're not down as much as Win and LVS are, but I will say they're down quite a bit from their high. This one almost looks kind of like a growth stock setup, Mike. Like it had a crazy explosion. Now it's just kind of consolidating with a lot of those other growth stocks. I'm definitely going to be eyeing them up off this $40 support. I think that's going to be really key over the next couple of weeks. And just kind of looking at it, I feel like the Penn is might be a little bit better than Win and LVS, Mike. I think the setup looks a little bit better personally on the daily. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I think the setup looks a little better, and I'm glad to see him down by this $40 support. I think that'll definitely help him. And for the longer term, I know that Penn should be pretty decent. They have a lot of hotels in Las Vegas and stuff too. And the good news is it's not just Penn falling, it's Win, LVS, and even MGM took a bit of a hit recently, at least. So we're definitely seeing a lot of the stocks down.
One interesting thing I did want to point out is while we're seeing all of the tech stocks get destroyed, some of the value stocks are holding up very well, like Starbucks we can look at. They're up like 0.5%, and they're actually like getting relatively close to a breakout, but they're in the green, and that's big, especially on a day like today. Even if we look at other companies like KO, that's up 0.4%. If we look at Walmart, that's up 0.65%. So the value stocks are definitely holding up. So I guess if you are looking for those types of setups that are actually green today, it's interesting to see I guess you could say the difference between growth stocks and value stocks right now.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. You're right. I actually just looked at the top of my watch list again, and it's pretty much I actually have KHC leading the way at 9.99%. Like, how does that even happen with Kraft leading the way? That's very rare. Target's another one that's been a pretty big value stock. They're looking pretty good. I know Caterpillar's been talked about quite a bit with that infrastructure bill getting passed, and they look pretty decent today too, actually. Caterpillar's been dipping down, and honestly, my Caterpillar might not be a bad long-term grab down here. I'll be honest. I'm definitely going to be eyeing up Caterpillar. They could definitely keep going down, but I'm definitely going to eye them up. It looks like a pretty good buy on the dip at least. And you're right, a lot of these value stocks look good. Even McDonald's, Mike, is looking pretty good today. So in the end, I'm glad to see these stocks doing well. It's just that, these stocks are slower movers. They're just not as fun to play options on.
Yeah. And then we have Vicky saying, no questions to ask today. I hope it turns around. I'm with you for sure. It's definitely looking brutal right now, and just all growth stocks are tanking. Like you look at basically any good stock over like the past 2 years, and it's most likely in the red today. Like I know we already said it a million times, but like even Zoom's down 6%. Like after their pretty great earnings for the past 2 quarters, like AI, Run, Palantir, Upwork, Tesla's bleeding. Tesla's down 4%. We have Nvidia down 4%. Like it's rare to see a company like Nvidia down 4%.
That is actually pretty rare, and especially looking at it on the daily, like, man, it's looking pretty rough. Like, I want to point one thing out though, Mike, is that the last time we saw, or we've seen Nvidia move like this a couple of times, but the last time it was kind of in this little like range, like it's in now, a couple of weeks ago, it kind of ended with like a red down 4% day, kind of like we had here, and then it gapped up, kind of maybe to start that week. I'm very curious to see how Nvidia is going to do starting next week. I feel like that over the weekend we might get a lot of news come out. Like we've been having a lot of stuff come out of China, a lot of stuff come out with the government and stuff lately. I feel like that over the weekend we might get some pretty good news. So definitely be aware, holding things into this weekend. I would definitely be a little careful. We might see, a turnaround. We might see a drastic drop, but I just wanted to point out that there's going to be, I think, a lot of added risk this weekend compared to most weekends that we've had. Just with everything going on, I feel like that there's a lot of outliers. And obviously, if we wake up and Nvidia is still on the downtrend Monday morning, it's not going to be good for number one, the SPY, and number two, obviously the QQQ. It's going to be a lot worse for that. And it's just definitely not looking good here, Mike. We just fell below 310, which was a pretty good support. So hopefully it doesn't sell off even more.
Yep, and then we have Mike saying, I sold Palantir, Penn, and AMC and YOLO'd into UVXY. So I really hope it pays off for you. If the market keeps tanking down, that will do very, very well. If the market reverses back up, then it'll be pretty rough. But yeah, I mean, I really, really hope it works out for you. UVXY is up like 7% today, and it's definitely an explosive mover.
Yeah, it is. I've played them before too. I think it can be pretty good. Just, like Mike said, if the market does end up going back, this one will tank down pretty quickly. So be a little careful with it. But I will say, if the market ends up going down, you might be pretty happy with how this one turns out. I've seen it. I'm not saying that it's going to do it this time, but I've seen this one go up well over like 300% within like a month before. So definitely eye it up. It can have some crazy moves, but in the end, it's just going to be a pretty hard next couple of weeks, Mike. Like we have all this news coming out, lots of different stuff from China. I feel like that every morning we wake up and there's something else like affecting the market. Like today it was the jobs report. Earlier in the week we had Powell talking. It's just like in the end, like at some point, I feel like we just need to have like just 1 week of just calm waters for once.
I know. Hopefully the bleeding ends soon. It's just like you look at some of these plays, whether it's Palantir, DraftKings, Corsair, even Zoom, right? Like even Zoom, you look at these charts and it's like, how much lower can they go? Because they just been bleeding for months now. So it's like, it's crazy. So I don't know. I mean, they're like, it just sucks short term because everything's bleeding. But then for the long term though, like I bet in like a year from now, Tom, or like 2 years from now, we're going to look back in December of 2021 and we're going to be like, wow, that was such a great opportunity, So it's just, it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, it is. And I kind of just wanted to go back and kind of show how Tesla kind of went in the beginning. So, like we can kind of see that Tesla, this is back in 2014, 2015. Now, keep in mind, this is on a split adjusted level. So it's going to look a little bit different than it actually looked at the time. I believe at the time, Tesla was more of at around like $200 a share, different stuff like that. But looking at it, Tesla was on a pretty, let's just say this, they were pretty volatile in the beginning. Like, look at all this. They were having some pretty negative earnings reports. Now let's go ahead and look at some of these other companies, or let's just talk about it. like we've been seeing lately. We've been seeing DraftKings come in with negative earnings. Look at this. Tesla was having some negative earnings for a while, and guess what? Their stock was tanking to the downside, and it wasn't just tanking down a little bit, guys. Like if we go back and we look at Tesla from the high to the low here, I mean, Tesla was down 48, 47, almost 50%. So that's a pretty big drop for such a big stock. I just want to point this out that whenever stocks are in growth phases, guys, you just have to understand that they're going to go up and they're going to go down a lot. And it's just how it works. It happened in the past with Tesla. You can see they rocketed right back up after the big drop. But, imagine during this time, I'm sure that there was a bunch of bad articles, just like what we're seeing with DraftKings, just like what we're seeing with Zoom, just like we see with everything else. At this time, I'm sure everyone was like, oh, Tesla's going to be bankrupt. They're running out of cash, this and that. I know that it was talked about. I saw a lot of the articles back then. And I just want to point it out because a lot of growth stocks are in this exact scenario right now. Like we can go look at Zoom. They're really falling off just like that. DraftKings, another good one, falling off down about 50%, maybe a little bit more. But in the end, just keep in mind, these growth stocks go up and down a lot. And I just want to point out that some of the bigger stocks like Tesla and AMD have went through these same exact type of up and down movements before too. And look at where they are now.
Very well said. Very well said. So should be a good opportunity for the long term. But Tom, do you have any last minute stocks, options, or any last minute words for the week?
Words for the week. Get the stocks back up, please. That's
Yeah.
going to be my statement this week. But yeah, I think it's pretty good here. Looking at the market, I'm definitely going to be eyeing up some plays more up to the downside with the SPY. I just think it's not looking the best. I was really looking for that breakout this morning up above like 460. Maybe I thought we could maybe come back up and retest 462, but it looks like we failed to break out. Once again, the market went up during pre-market and then down at market open drastically. We've seen it happen a lot over the past couple of weeks, and it's just been so up and down. I will say be pretty careful trading over the next week. I think it's going to be pretty volatile. I like how people have been grabbing positions of VXX and UVXY. I think that's smart, especially if you have other hedges or if you have other long-term positions in place. This will make for a perfect hedge. So I think it could be pretty good. And if you guys want to look at some day trades, if VXX breaks above their high of 27.37, that might be a pretty good breakout play if the SPY is going down.
No doubt. Well, thank you guys so much for joining the stream today. We have Vicky with the last comment saying there's a lot of good news out there. The fourth quarter GDP expected to be 9.7%. This is huge. Yeah, it definitely is great news. Just hopefully it turns around the sentiment in the market. Sometimes we have some great news come out, the market tanks, and then sometimes we have some horrible news come out and the market pops up. So hopefully the bleeding ends soon. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining the stream today, and we hope you have an amazing rest of your day.